Welcome to Corpse Club, the official podcast of DailyDead.com. I'm one of your co-hosts, Jonathan James, and I'm joined today by Miss Tamika Jones and Mr. Derek Anderson. This episode, we're traveling to 1985 and heading to the Starcourt Mall before heading back to present-day Sweden. So for those that guessed it, we're talking about Stranger Things Season 3, and then we're going to jump into Ari Aster's Midsommar. So I want to kind of get right into it. Tamika, I know you've seen all of Stranger Things Season 3, like many people have who are listening to us right now. I'm excited to talk about it because we haven't had a chance to catch up. What do you think of the season so far?
I'm excited to talk about this too because I'm of two opinions at the moment. I'm kind of in the middle on the season. I think that the story with the kids was still just as solid as it's always been. I really enjoyed their adventures. I feel like there were some characters that had very little to do, and I felt I had a little slight issue with some of the writing and the direction of the characters. So I'm of two minds. I like the season, but I don't love the season.
Okay, this is going to be an interesting episode, and
Yeah.
especially because Derek, you know, we wanted you on here, but you've only seen 2 episodes. So I'm going to ask you. I said to Tamika, I said, "Well, what do you think of the season so far?" But really, that should have been for you because Tamika's seen the entire thing. So Derek, what do you think of the season so far? 2 episodes in.
Love it. It feels like a sampler platter for me because I'm taking these little bite-sized pieces, and it's almost like I've watched the trailer and that's as far as I've gone, because a lot of at least the first trailer, I feel like came from these first 2 episodes. Then I watched the final trailer, which I was surprised they even released, and I feel like I got some things spoiled for me. So I feel like I've watched more than the first 2 episodes, but that is as far as I've gotten. So it's kind of been a nice little stepping my toes into the pool. Billy's the lifeguard and all sorts of crazy stuff's going down. But I've really enjoyed it so far. The reason I haven't watched beyond that is because we always watch it with my family, and my dad had to go out of town for work, and my sister and brother-in-law are doing a bunch of home renovations. So we got as far as 2 episodes after getting back from our 4th of July vacation. So we're still settling back into everything. But I'm glad I got to watch those first 2 episodes. It felt from the very beginning like they were going bigger with season 3. Like that was the goal that they wrote on the whiteboard in the writer's room. Let's go bigger. We've got a mall setting now, which feels natural. But really that opening in Russia with the huge reactor machine, or whatever you want to call it, it just felt like that was the most digital effects they had done in a scene since, other than maybe the end of season 2 and the finale. But it just felt like, whoa, the budget got bigger. Let's go. You know, this is kind of like the Aliens of Stranger Things, or in this case, maybe Alien 3, but that doesn't quite feel right.
There's so much more for you, Derek. So I can't wait to finish it. But anyway, what were you going to say?
Yeah. I mean, I've liked it so far. I've like Tamika said, I feel like the kids' storylines are the strongest, and they're getting more attention for what I've seen so far, especially because now you have Billy in the mix, and you just have these characters that they've been developing and these friendships. And it feels like, whereas the first season, the adults had kind of more of an even split with the screen time, at least from what I've seen again so far, it feels like the kids are definitely taking center stage, and the adults are still very important, but a little more in the background as far as stuff that's going on. So I'm curious to see how that will play out.
So we wanted you here, Derek, but part of it was because I'm trying to get your episode count to stay up. So we talked about last time. I think you've been in the most episodes we had, so we can't not have you. But no, seriously, it's because, you saw the first 2 seasons. We're going to dive into those, and I want to kind of compare those and I don't know, do a mini retrospective on the first 2 seasons as well, because I think it kind of informs what we get in season 3. For me personally, and I guess this will lead into it, is that I really enjoyed the first season. and I found that the second season was kind of just more of the same, and it felt a little bland to me. And so we had, they go back to the facility. We in season 2, we have the storyline where Elle meets somebody else like her, but it kind of takes her way away from the story. And it didn't have that same, I don't know, it didn't feel like it had that same lightness or that same magic that the first season had. Whereas I think it's completely back and it feels much more polished in the third season. And I was a little skeptical when it first started. I was maybe a little skeptical because of the lower episode count, but I actually think in this case it helped. And I think they really know what they are right now. I think this is something that this has been a critique of Stranger Things, or a criticism rather, is that it relies too heavily on nostalgia, or takes pieces of different movies or different themes that we've seen in the past and mashes them together. And instead of like trying to pull away from that and come with something original and be like, we're not, this amalgam of nostalgia. They leaned way into it this season. So we have the mall, where we have, we have plenty of different brands. We'll talk about that even in more details for product placement. But they have things like Back to the Future. They have Day of the Dead. They talk about The Thing. They have storylines that feel like they're straight out of the Terminator. And so I think instead of, like I said, shying away from it, they really recognized what they were, and they leaned into it. Everything feels bigger, feels brighter, and I like this significantly better than season 2.
This is interesting because I'm on the opposite end of you. Because I think what I liked about season 1 and 2 was that the nostalgia and the nods were like, I don't want to say subtle, but they weren't so in your face. Where I feel like is here, we're just getting, we might as well have gotten like a new Coke commercial. Like they should have just slapped that, like just put a pause on the story and just have like a new Coke commercial. You know what I mean by the new Coke? Like talk about the 80s, Max Headroom, used to, like I just feel like they should have just, I thought that was coming. Like, oh God, here comes a cameo from Max Headroom, which would actually be kind of cool. But no, I was really bothered by the nostalgia bomb. That's what I keep calling it, because I just feel like it was just everywhere. Yeah, like the Terminator and just like the new Coke and the clothes and but the scrunchie. I know I'm bringing up the scrunchie in like a positive way because it did kind of make me happy. But now it's just like, no, don't rely so much on these things, because I feel like this story is suffering for that, because I think instead of having more of like a solid story for everyone, I just thought, like let's just give people what they want. We're gonna take them to the mall. We're gonna give them bright colors. We're gonna we're gonna bring up a very awesome movie from a lot of people's childhoods that involves a dragon sort of sorts. You know what I mean, Jonathan? I feel like you know what that means.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, is it Day of the Dead? Was there a dragon in Day of the Dead that I missed?
No. Derek, I feel like you will appreciate this when you see it. So I don't want to ruin that for you. But there was a lot of that, like a little too much.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like as an 80s kid, and Tamika, I know you were an 80s kid as well. Like it didn't bother me as much because I don't know. In some ways, this is going to sound a little bit contradictory, but in some ways it felt authentic to the 80s, but in other ways it was very like your mind's eye of what the 80s was. So I was kind of cool with them like leaning into this like more stylized version of the 80s, which again, we got some of that in season 2 with the arcade. But yeah, I felt like I'm okay because even the story from the beginning, like I always like I really enjoyed the first season, but I didn't think it was the best thing ever. And so I always thought that had, and so I felt that was a mix of different, of Carrie or a Firestarter and of a ton of other movies that we've seen. So, I mean, I thought it wore its influences from the start. And my only issue, like I said, with season 2 was I felt like it was like a stretched story. Like they didn't know exactly where to go. Like with Lost, it's like, oh my God, this is like a phenomenon. This is bigger than we ever expected it to be. Like we need more seasons. And I feel like that's almost where we got in season 2. But I can understand that. And especially because I know, seeing some of the feedback online, I know other people felt exactly the same way with you, that there's too much product placement, that you're showing me, you essentially have a new Coke commercial, when as we get later in the season, and that is a bit much, but at the same time, I know a lot of people are watching this who didn't live through the 80s. And so to be like, these are the types of movies that kids would have gone to see. Like if this was in 85, you in the summer, like you would have been like Back to the Future, or you could have snuck into Day of the Dead. And there are very likely people that did. If we called, the first, if we said this was like, if we said season 2 was like Aliens to season 1's Alien, and I agree in terms of scale, it was like, let's do more Demogorgons. I don't necessarily think in terms of quality, but I'd say this feels almost like Jurassic Park to me. This feels more Spielbergian. Is that from Animaniacs? I feel like it's from Animaniacs. If anybody watched Animaniacs, but I feel like Spielbergian, or it's from Tiny Toons, right? How Spielbergian. Yeah, it is. It's somebody. I'll have to Google this. And I'm not talking, I'm going to check. But I think it's part of the song from like Animaniacs or Tiny Toons. We'll get back to our listeners on that. But anyway, it feels Spielbergian in a lot of ways, and or like Zemeckis or something like that. Like I said, it feels larger than life. But what I really like is that there was a lot of focus on character here. I think because of the smaller episode count, and again, because of that product placement, we probably lost some character time. But I think the characters that mattered the most, I think, are really what we got to, what they really focused on. I mean, there are scenes that go on longer than they should have been. There's I'm Derek, because I'm not going to ruin it for you. And we didn't spoiler warning this thing, but yeah, we are going to get into some more spoilers. So if you haven't seen all of Stranger Things, and then feel free to tune out for this part. But there's a sing along towards the end of the season, and that went longer than you probably would expect it to. Yes. And there's a bathroom scene with a couple of characters where they just focus on the two of them talking for a long time. They spend some time building these like incredible character moments, and these characters in some cases that are introduced, like Robin, who gets introduced just in this season alone. Like, I'm glad that they were able to give, and it seems like the story allowed them to give them these really great character moments. And obviously, I think they did a lot of great stuff with Jim Hopper as well, and Joyce.
Yeah, I do agree. The new characters are just as awesome as the ones that we've had since season 1. Like you mentioned, Maya Hawke as Robin, who's been great because she's the perfect balance to Steve Harrington's ego. And it's just so much fun to see them bounce back and forth. And it seems like she's a character. It doesn't even seem like she's new to this world. It feels like she's been around, and we just haven't gotten around to her yet. She just feels very natural to the story. It doesn't feel like, oh, we're putting in this new character because Steve needs someone to bounce off of with these conversations. It just feels very organic. And the fact that Steve is working at this kind of ridiculous ice cream shop in the mall is just so much fun. His character arc over the 3 seasons and what I've seen of season 3 so far, it's just amazing how much he has changed from like season 1. You just think he's going to be the stereotypical jerk who's going to like dump Nancy or not treat her right and then get his comeuppance. But then he becomes kind of the hero in season 2. And now it's like he's trying to find his true path, and he's still like this role model, strangely enough, for like Dustin's character. For Gatton's character, Dustin. So it's really, really interesting how they've handled him. And it's great to see like Sadie Sink as Maxine or Max. Like she's getting a lot more time in this season. And I think that's really important because, before you had 11 as kind of this only female character and a very badass kind of character. But we see that a lot where there's just one female character surrounded by like all these guys and there, that's it. There's no other girls or women around, but it's great to have her have a true friendship with Max where they actually are treated more as like real people and have this friendship. It's not always about what the guys are doing or how the guys view 11. It's more of this, this is a great friendship. And we get to see this other side of 11 that we probably wouldn't have seen otherwise without Max around. So I really like that. And I got such a kick out of the Sheriff Hopper stuff that I've seen so far, just how he's kind of struggling as this single dad and the whole dating thing with Mike and how he just wants to kill him and how he twists Joyce's words around. It's so great. So I think it is amazing how they've still found some character moments, even with how much of a spectacle the show is. So it's fun to see that still, but I cannot wait to see where they go with it next.
And I'm jumping in just to confirm that, yes, how Spielbergian was from Animaniacs.
Wow. So if this was a 90s Stranger Things, we'd really be on par.
We'd really, yeah. We went to the future a little bit. But let's stay on character because I definitely there's some more great things I want to talk about. But Tamika, I wanted to get your take on some of your favorite characters or character moments in this season.
Yeah, Derek brought up a really good point. It kind of reminds me, because I thought, okay, now I feel like I'm being kind of too down on this season. I'm not. I liked it. It was just somewhat disappointing. But, one of the things I really enjoy about this show, and just from season 1 and 2 included, is that the characters definitely have arcs and they grow. And speaking of Back to the Future, I feel like every season there's like a Biff, Steve was Biff. Steve was a Biff-ish. But Billy, my God, was a Biff. Gah. And each, definitely a Biff. And, but they grow and change and they have their moments to shine and do something really cool. And I really like that about the show, I know I said earlier that, some of the characters I feel like they just kind of spin their wheels. And I still think that. But, Billy, I got to say, I really hated him. I really did. And I thought, maybe they won't bring him back. But I don't know. Maybe they should, because the most 80s thing I think I've ever seen someone do is smoke while working out. And Billy, oh my God, that mullet was like, okay, I don't know. I can't completely write you out, but I'm glad I didn't because I really, not to get into spoiler territory, but I really enjoyed him. And I thought when I saw him, I was like, oh God, here we go. Okay. And, he still had his moments where he's a broken soul, Billy. So he still had his moments and I thought, oh God, here we go. But no, he really stepped up in a major way. And I really enjoyed watching him. And I still enjoy the kids. I got to say, Will and Mike, not so much. But I still love Lucas. And I love Max. And I love their relationship, Lucas and Max. That's cute. I'm like, oh, okay. So I enjoyed watching them and like totally fangirling a little bit. Billy, let's see. Oh, that smart mouth Erica. I'm kind of two minds about her because I don't know. I don't know if maybe she should have been used like in previous seasons. She should have kind of been used sparingly. But then again, it was nice to see her get more screen time and be more involved with certain things.
Yeah, and Erica was a surprise this season. She was great.
She was like cussing. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah, she was really great.
And
Yeah,
I think
she
that
was
was
fun.
I think that was a direct response to how well she was received in season 2, where the writers and the directors are like, oh, we have to find more for her to do in season 3.
Oh, okay.
Because I remember kind of like how Barb blew up in season 1, where everyone just
right.
really latched onto Barb. I think the same kind of thing happened with Erica in season 2, just like with Twitter and memes and everything like that.
Oh, okay. That's cool. Okay, then. Well, you should give the fans what they want. Okay. Then, yeah. Okay, it's settled. She should have gotten more screen time.
It is funny, though, how she's one of the youngest characters, and yet she is the one that is saying some of the more like crazy things. You know, you never know.
Oh, my God. Yeah. And there's definitely the shock factor of like little kids swearing, you know, that's kind of funny. That makes it funny.
Oh, yeah.
So I get that. Yeah, she was a lot of fun, even though she was somewhat annoying at times. Like, okay, you. So I think those are my. Okay, so we got Billy, Erica, Lucas, Max, 2, 11. Yeah, I don't know if it was maybe Millie Bobby Brown's acting. Not that I think that she's a terrible actress. No, she's great. But like, there was something. I don't know. There's something extra about her acting this season. I really, really liked. She was very believable. So that's my top 5. My top 5 characters.
And I think too we're seeing 11 emotionally evolve rather. And I think that's something that, you know, we get to see her flex her acting chops a little bit more. So I think we got to see that here. And that was good. Yeah.
I remember season 2, one of the hardest things for me was how 11 was away from everybody for most of the season. Like, she wasn't around the kids really at all until the very end. And then she was just with Sheriff Hopper, and then she went and had her adventure in the city, which was really cool, but it just felt so different from season 1, where it was all the kids together. So it almost feels like coming home and seeing all the kids interacting right away in season 3. It just feels almost like something we've been waiting to see for years, especially because we've had almost a 2-year wait in between season 2 and season 3.
And it's interesting because that part of the story, I'm curious to see what they do with it. But I mean, I'm assuming that, you know, when she goes, when she leaves town, that storyline is going to connect later on. But right now it feels so disjointed or orphaned from the rest of the story. I'm assuming it's going to pull all back in, and there's some other elements from season 2 that didn't really come back into season 3 in a major way. So, I mean, I feel like they've really mapped things out. So I'd be surprised now at this point. Like I said, in season 2, I wasn't sure that they knew exactly where they were going. By the end of season 3, I feel like they've mapped out the whole story at this point, and they know where everybody's going.
And they have those tie-in books too, and the comic books now. So they could always do something with those other characters in one of those, where they just have a book all about the other people that have been experimented on and the group that she hangs out with and that kind of thing. So they've kind of created this multimedia world where they can, if they decide not to follow up with it in the TV show, it'd be like, well, we can just explain what happened to them in a book. Because I think they've already had a few books come out already, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, they've had some comics, and I haven't kept up with the extended universe of Stranger Things. Again, I like it, but it's not. I mean, for a lot of people, or for some people, it's like their Star Wars. It's not my Star Wars, but it's cool to me that they have built a world that you can continue to expand in different ways. So I like that. But I just haven't dove into it. I do want to talk about something, but Derek, I'm going to give you an earmuff second if you want it. Feel free to jump out for 60 seconds. So Tamika, one of my biggest surprises in terms of characters, and one of my favorite characters this season is Murray.
Okay. Oh yeah.
So we can't talk about this season without talking about Murray. And
That's
I thought
true.
that his relationship with Alexi was so great as well. Like, that was unexpected for me. I wasn't expecting him to be as big in the season, Murray, that is. And I think the storyline they gave him and the I guess importance that they gave him was unexpected, and results in a lot of the season's comedy towards the second half.
Yes, I agree. Because he did that so well in previous seasons. He had this like sense of humor. And I also love that they kept up with the how would you say like not matchmaking, like a love counselor. I love how he's just out here giving people love advice. But I always thought to myself, what, like he should like take his own advice, or like where's his person, like where's his match? He's out here giving everyone else advice.
Yeah, it might have been Alexei, but yeah, and it's interesting because he does kind of play the role of the audience in some cases, which is like, I can see what's going on, like everybody can see what's going on. Wouldn't you two just admit it?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so he was great, and then we got Mr. Clark for a minute. So I think it's you couldn't have a season without him. So we got him back in the beginning, explaining magnets to everybody. And again, he's also a kind of like a conduit for the audience, where he, as the teacher, can explain it to the children, but he can also explain it to the audience. So I thought it was nice.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I could see Netflix giving him his own like Bill Nye show one day.
Oh,
yeah, they should do like a viral type thing where they give him like 5-minute like mini-sodes before the next season.
That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I would watch them. That's why I suggested it. I'm going to stray off of Stranger Things for a minute because I didn't mean to ask it earlier. I just thought about it while we were talking about it. But it's interesting because while I was watching this with my wife Christy, we were talking about how much of this season kind of resonated with me and with my childhood. It's common for some kids to really hang out at the mall. You don't have a car. You can hang out with different kids, and your parents aren't around, so you spend time in the mall. And you go to the movies, and you go to the food court. You might not have any money, but you can like go into stores and see what they have. But that was a pretty common experience for me growing up, whereas for my wife, it wasn't. Were you, Tamika, were you a mall kid during your like late grade school and early teenage years?
No, I wish. I guess my mall was the roller skating rink. So like that's where like me and my friends and all the kids in middle school would congregate. It was like the roller skating rink.
That's pretty cool.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's like more 70s. That's really cool. Yeah, it has that like 70s vibe. Everyone's at the roller rink.
It was just like what you did. Like you on a Friday night, if you liked someone, they were there, your friends. It was just like, I have so many memories. Sorry, I'm not going to go there. Sorry.
No, that's why I asked. But it's funny that, I guess, but that is kind of, like I said, a shared experience with a lot of teens. Is that, like I said, like going with your friends and meeting other people there and having that place to hang out. I don't know if kids do that as much these days, because now you have.
I don't know.
We don't know. I don't know.
It's funny because it's kind of the opposite now, where we saw in Stranger Things how all the mom and pops shops were closing and Main Street was deserted because everyone went to the mall, and now it feels like, at least where I'm at, malls seem to, I guess they're still around, and maybe they're making a comeback because they're not really closing left or right, but it just seems like people are going, to more of these smaller boutique shops down in like Uptown, or going to these charming little stores and supporting the independent businesses. And malls are they seem almost like a relic of the past, but I think they're still always going to be around because it's that convenience thing where you can just get everything you want in one, just by going to one location. And up in Minnesota, we have the Mall of America as well, which is like a tourist attraction. They're building like a giant hotel right next door. They did build one, and people come from all over the world just to shop there, which is like, it just blows my mind. Not that I don't dislike the Mall of America. Just, it amazes me that people will come out of their way just to visit that specifically. And it's a place I've been to every once in a while growing up, but it's a little far away from home, or it wasn't like right next door where I would just go and hang out. But that would have been the mall because they have Legoland and a roller coaster indoors and just about every store you can imagine, and a movie theater and all that jazz. but I never really hung out at that mall or really any mall growing up. There was the Northtown Mall that was right near where I grew up and is still there today. And that would be like some place we'd always go Christmas shopping on the day after Thanksgiving and that kind of thing. So we'd go to the mall for special occasions, but it was never like, oh, I'm going to go to the mall and go to the food court and play on the arcade and see what's going on. Even though I always wished that kind of oasis existed because I loved 80s culture growing up so much, it just didn't seem like that. It seemed like it had kind of passed by and then it was on to like the next phase, even though malls in the 90s were still around and still, generally popular. It was just didn't feel like the place to be as much, even though I'm sure if I was like in high school in the 90s, it probably would have been.
It's amazing that you look back and you wish you were in those years. But again, 80s are hot right now.
You know what I did do growing up, though, as a quick side note, is my sister and I had an 80s board game called Mall Madness. And listeners, if you remember this, let us know. This was the funnest game ever. Still pull it out every once in a while. And the goal of the game is to go around on this massive mall shopping board. And it's 2 levels and you just go around and shop and you try to get to the stores that have the deals. And then you have credit cards and the host of the game, which is this robotic voice that sounds a little more demonic every year we play it. He'll tell you that there's a sale at the shoe store and then you haul ass to the shoe store. And that's kind of the game. So I played that a lot growing up. So maybe that was my mall experience.
That was your mall. And you always had the cul-de-sac gang. So
that's true.
It wasn't like you had to meet people. Like my friends were all spread out. I wasn't a mall kid. Like I didn't go to the mall every single week, but we would hang out at the mall. And when I was in high school, I was in an all guys school. So we knew that there would be girls from the opposite, like all girls school, and they would be at the mall. So we'd go to the mall. We'd spend all day at the mall. We'd go see movies and we'd go eat. And like I said, we wouldn't shop. We would just go into stores and be hooligans. And I would be embarrassed for my friends. Because I wasn't the one, you see like there are those punk kids that just hang out at the mall. I wasn't a punk kid, but
I wasn't a punk kid.
But there were punk kids that I knew.
I thought for a second there you were going to say you were in an all boys like boy band growing up, but maybe that was
I mean, if we had a band, we didn't have a band, but if we did, it would have been a all boy band at the school. But yeah, no, I was at an all guys high school. Anyway, I digress. I'll save that for another episode.
Now you have to start a band and name yourselves the Mall Rats.
Ooh,
there you go.
That's a good one.
I'm only going to start a band though if you two will join it.
Oh, I'm in.
Yes.
Okay. There we go. It's done. The Mall Rats.
Done.
But you know what? We can start hanging out at the mall now. You're never too old or young to start hanging out at the mall.
It's true.
I don't know why I'm advertising for the malls. It's a product placement. New Coke, the best Coke. It's like the thing.
Kevin Smith's Mallrats also filmed in Minnesota, so this is the state of malls.
Oh.
Yeah. So I feel like I should go to malls more.
You should.
Yeah.
Come on, Derek.
Yeah, Amazon's getting rid of them. I don't go to the mall hardly at all anymore. Maybe if there's something like if I want if it's clothing in some cases, or say if it's food, I'm not going to go to the food court. I've been to the food court in ages. Like there's a restaurant there, I'll go.
But if you can always go and kind of pretend to have your own Dawn of the Dead experience. And if it's, because it's sometimes I'll go there late at night if I need. There's one store that I'll go to, and if I have to go there late at night, it almost seems like it's deserted, and you just feel like maybe this is it.
Maybe and you know what? I'm completely lying because I called you, Derek, and I told before we talked or before I left this evening, I went to the mall to get my haircut. So I still go to the mall. The mall still
and
pulls me back.
And here you are talking about not going in the mall.
I know exactly. I'm a liar. Don't believe anything I say.
But not as cool as Starcourt Mall.
No, not as cool.
No,
not as cool. Definitely not as
prime. Cool. That's the thing is like malls in the 80s were in their primes. Like they were this new concept, late 70s, early 80s, mid 80s. They were such a new thing. And now it just seems like they've lost their luster, but maybe they're making a comeback. I don't know. It feels like, but like you said, Amazon is around and now you literally can get food, booze, and everything in between delivered to your doorstep. So you really don't have to leave the house.
It sounds like you're advertising again, but this is not
Again.
Yeah. So bringing us back to Stranger Things, something that I thought was interesting, because we didn't pick these two movies intentionally. We didn't pick Stranger Things and Midsommar talk about together intentionally, but they do share some themes, and I think that's very interesting that both movies, and we'll talk about how it affects Midsommar later, but on Stranger Things, it deals with trauma quite a bit this season. This season deals with characters who each handle the trauma of the past two seasons differently, and you see how trauma affects them. And how they interact with each other. In some cases, some people haven't gotten over it and they're worried that there's something around every corner. There are some people that are like, well, everything's fine. We took care of it. It's gone. And even when the evidence is right in front of you, you deny it. There are some people in the middle of that scale who are, trying to live their lives, but they also know that something can come up. And so I thought that was an interesting theme for this season because I think it informs what all of these characters do. And obviously by the end of the season, it is very apparent, and they put it right in your face that, hey, this is kind of what we're dealing with, basically that you have to try to move on after trauma, and you have to try to push through, and you have to keep fighting. And that's what we end up seeing all of these characters do by the end of the season, is regardless of where they were or how they feel at the end of the day, and we've seen that in the other seasons as well, but at the end of the day, they get together and they fight.
Bringing that, I don't know, now I feel kind of sad for some characters thinking about their trauma and how they're handling it. I'm really nervous for Steve and Will going into this next season. Like I feel like they've been very kind of discarded by most of the characters, and they don't really have a way to deal with their trauma. Or is that just me? Like I feel like her name's Robin, right?
Yeah.
The new character. And I know maybe he has her to talk to, but I never really got the feeling that was going to be a solid friendship or anything like that, So, I mean, I obviously don't think that she doesn't care about him, but I don't know. I just don't see, he doesn't have anyone to like really just unload his stuff on, and kind of like, hello, darkness, my old friend. with anyone. And that just breaks my heart because I really love Steve. And Will, my God, that poor kid. I just feel like maybe, I don't know what he should do.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think the point that you bring out here, and in addition to what I said, because I think something that maybe people take for granted, or maybe people don't understand completely, and obviously the writers here do, but I think there are a lot of people out there that feel like when someone experiences a traumatic event, that it takes a certain amount of time and then you get over it. And this is something we see in Midsommar as well, that there's a as we just jump right into it, but there's a crazy traumatic event at the beginning of Midsommar, and some people expect that this character is going to just snap out of it eventually. Like, how long does it take for you to get over a traumatic event? Is it a year? Is it a month? Is it 10 years? And the thing is that for most people, it's never, and I think that's a really interesting topic to deal with. And something that's really interesting to acknowledge is that, even though we're dealing with fictional characters and fictional situations, there are people that go through traumatic events all the time, whether it be a loss in the family or you lose your job or whatever the case may be. Like, there is no set amount of time and there's no set method for how you deal with this for how you feel better. And that's what we see these characters. That's what we see these characters go through. And so I guess clarifying or expanding on what I said initially, they don't get over these problems by the end of this season, and they still are, even though they get together to fight the Mind Flayer. They still, by the end of it, to your point, there are some characters that seem to be dealing with this much better than others, and for sure, Will is someone who doesn't look like he's gotten over this, while some other people are excited to talk about what's next, and they're excited about TV and our games and Dungeons and Dragons, like there are some people who are like, oh my God, like I'm still dealing with this. Yeah. I think it's really interesting that this show deals with that.
And Will has this special connection with the Upside Down, obviously spending as much time in it as he did, that it feels like it's become this part of him that he can't get rid of. And that's both a pro and a con, because he can sense things that are happening that others can't. Like not even 11 seems to be on the same level as him as far as feeling out what's going on with the Upside Down and having that intuition that he seems to have. And unfortunately, the downside of that is it's hard for him to be a carefree kid. And I really thought that he deserved, in season 2, I thought he deserved a lot more recognition, specifically from whether it was an Emmy nomination or just more discussion about his performance, because I thought he really was the all-star in season 2. We basically saw him go through an exorcism, and who knows how much of that might stick with him, how much of that dark side might be within him if they really want to go dark in future seasons. But it's really interesting that he is kind of this odd person out. Like he can't connect with these things, these concerns, and these things that people look forward to at his age, because he's got all this other stuff going on. And I think his Noah Schnapp's performance is so good, and he's so great at portraying that foreboding sense of dread and that hopefulness that kind of peeks out every once in a while, but there's this dark cloud over him all the time, and you can't help but wonder what that's going to, when that thunderstorm is really going to erupt. And it's really tough to watch in a way, but it's really good acting too. And I'm really excited to see where they go with that moving forward, because I mean, he's kind of like their secret weapon in a way, but who knows? Obviously I need to see what happens this season. So I'm excited. But that's what it got to me, like in the first couple episodes of this season, that they really hammered home, is that Noah as Will Byers is just on this completely different, level than his friends. He's not experiencing life the same way. And then he's also dealing with the death of someone very close to him in season 2. We've seen, the Bob Newby effect, and just how there's that picture of him on the refrigerator, and how Bob kind of made that connection with him in season 2, or really tried to, at least. And that's, affecting Joyce as well. I think they've really shown that with the Byers family, there's just a lot going on that is darker than even others, even stuff with 11, which she has a really dark storyline. So it's pretty interesting how they've kind of doubled down on that in season 3.
You're in for some stuff, Derek.
Wait, it doesn't get lighthearted? I thought this was that episode 2 was as dark as it gets, and then they're just gonna do a comedy for the next 6 episodes.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, I feel like this season's lighter than season 2, but maybe I have to go back to season 2. But I feel like this is a lighter season. This is a more fun season.
Yeah.
Any season that has a shopping spree is more lighthearted.
Exactly. So, but before we move on to Midsommar, I want to learn a little bit from Tamika about where you would like to see season 4 head. What's your prediction for it? Derek, feel free to tune out for a minute.
Right? I was like, Derek, earmuffs.
The adults are about to talk. I'll step out.
Okay. So initially I thought, maybe they should just stop here. It's as good as it gets. I feel like this might veer off in quality, and I'm scared about that. So maybe we could just let this be. But then I thought, Now, some things happen towards the end that's just clearly not going to happen. So we're getting another season. So, okay. I think this might be cliche, but I promise it could work. Okay. They should do a time jump. And you gave me this idea, Jonathan, because they could skip 5 years, and they could go into the 90s, like early 90s, especially 90, 91 is basically like the 80s, but then you start getting a little more alternative. So it would be kind of nice if the kids could grow up a little bit and maybe I don't know, jump in time 5-6 years. 6 years would put them in college, correct? Or no?
Trying to think of exactly how old they are now. It might put them in college.
Because that would be kind of cool.
Yeah, I think it would definitely put them in college. Yeah, I mean, I'm good with a time jump. I guess I would say along those lines, I think they took a little more time to work on this season, and so I'm okay. I don't know if they can. I mean, I had to look at the actual ages of the actors to see if that would work out. But I'm okay if they take 2 years, basically, to figure out what they want to do for the next season. Like, if we get a season every 2 years, I'd rather have that than have them rush a season every year.
Right.
It seems, now they have this alternate reality game that they're running. Have you heard about it?
No, alternate reality game?
Yeah, so you know how sometimes I'll do those immersive experiences where you'll go to a location and it'll be almost like an escape room, but it'll last for longer. Well, they have these, they call them ARGs, or alternate reality games, and they have basically puzzles or clues that you have to find and solve online. And people will get together, and sometimes they involve you going to physical locations. So I'll just start by saying that they had for the ice cream store, they had an ad, and it had Morse code, and that was a phone number. When you called that phone number, it asked you for a code. And if you know the secret code word, it gives you details, which takes you to a server. On that server are files. And so people have been working together and tunneling through every day these different clues. And then there's tie-ins with, there apparently are tie-ins with other real life events. So the Microsoft Store just did something with Windows, I think 1.1 or something like that. To tie out with a Windows version from the early or the mid 80s, and that ties in. And then there's some other phone numbers that you can call. And so as people continue to work together and solve these clues, things are unlocking. And it's very likely that people are going to have to travel to different locations to solve different pieces. So, but anyway, where I was getting with this was, as cool as that is, because I'm really into that stuff and I'm curious to see where it goes, it includes details on other locations, basically other gates. So I think the world of Stranger Things, and if you heard the Duffer Brothers talking recently about it, it looks like it's going to expand. And it might not get as big of a scale as we'll say Star Wars or something, or Independence Day, where it's that big, but we may see some adventures that move them. It definitely seems like we're moving them out of their hometown, but they may be going to other locations, or maybe, they'll be pulled into other locations. And so I think we're going to see the more global effect of the Upside Down as other governments start to become aware of it.
Okay. So I thought of a way to work around this question I'm going to ask you. Okay. So on that topic, okay, do you think that a certain someone would maybe have possibly gone through Yeah,
that's my guess.
Okay. And that's how we're going to get to that. That's how we're going to get to that world. I guess the expansion.
I think that's at least how they're going to solve that mystery. I don't think we've seen. Yeah. That's all I'm going to say, because I think Derek came back by now. I'm I don't want to say it.
Oh.
but
yeah. He's good. He's good.
That's funny. But yeah, I think, I don't think that's the end of that. So I think they're going to answer that. And did you watch the after credits?
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, that could be your answer right there as well.
Okay.
So we'll see. But yeah, I think that's where they're going to go with it. I'm cool with them expanding it. I think they kind of did the best version of like, you know, this 80s overload at the mall. So like they're going to have to come up with a new concept now. So
yeah, like please no more member berries.
Oh my God.
Don't, no more.
I want more.
No more member berries.
All right, Derek's back. Okay, so we're going to wrap up our Stranger Things season 3 portion of the episode, and we're going to move into Midsommar. We talked about it a little bit already. It's an interesting movie in many ways, and I think kind of like Hereditary, there's a lot to talk about. It's a very divisive movie, and people have very different opinions. I think in some cases, the story intentionally allows you to kind of follow your own path, and that's what I like about Hereditary. It's what I like about Midsommar. So we're gonna talk about that. Another warning again: if anyone's kind of skipping around, there will be spoilers for Midsommar. So if you haven't seen it, we'll catch you later. And let's just jump right in. Derek, we'll have you take this one. I know you saw all of Midsommar. I hope you saw all of Midsommar and didn't just skip out after the first 20 minutes. But what do you think?
No, I couldn't leave. I was in trance, so there's no way I could, even if I wanted to. To start out, you know how when you get a theater ticket and they tell you, hey, you know, take your first right and it'll be there. Well, you'd think I was told by 2 different employees, okay, theaters take 2 lefts. It's the first left, then you take a second left. So what do I do with Angry Orchard in hand after I get my ticket torn? I take a right. At that point, I'm thinking they might just grab my Angry Orchard and say you've had enough. I had a 50-50 shot and I just blew it and felt like the jester at that point. So when I turned around the right way and went the way they just kept hammering in my head to go, and found my seat in the theater, it was a really memorable movie-going experience.
So wait, so where did you end up when you went the other direction? Like, were you in a void? Were you in limbo? Did you make it into another movie? Like, yeah, where did you go?
Hälsingland, actually. It was an immersive experience. Hälsingland, you just walk right in and you get your white attire. And no, they actually caught me. They caught me right after I started to go that direction, so I didn't make it very far.
So they had already identified you as under some kind of substance. And,
exactly.
Yeah,
I was on my own.
Yeah,
and I had my Ziploc bag of like chocolate raisins and pumpkin seeds, so they probably thought that was mushrooms or something like that. I was really getting into it.
Quick question though, and I love hearing about the theater experience. Are the pumpkin seeds from Halloween and you just have so many that you've just been making it through them, or did you buy new pumpkin seeds from the store?
No, these are new ones from the store. Although that would be pretty amazing if I was still working on it this far into the year and I just had a supply that I kept until.
I mean, if you keep them air sealed, we should do that. See, the thing is, there's like, it doesn't taste the same as making your own pumpkin seeds. So
no.
Like I can't buy them.
No. And yeah, when you put them in the oven, you get it just buttered and salted just right. It's so good.
Yeah. Why isn't it Halloween already?
Right?
Yeah.
But on that note, it was really cool. I'm always curious, like, who's going to see these movies. And I was alone this time because I had seen Spider-Man with my friend Zach, that we always go to movies every week, and other people that my sister and brother-in-law have been so busy. So I was just like, all right, I'll go to another movie alone. I have no problem with that. I enjoy seeing movies with people, but I also am comfortable seeing them on my own. And are you really alone when you experience it with a crowd of people? So it was like people of all ages. I saw people in their 60s. I saw teenagers. So it was just, and the theater was pretty packed. It was a smaller theater, but it was pretty packed. And we all just kind of buckled in and experienced the movie. And yeah, it was an experience. I'm still digesting it after about a day since I've seen it. But overall, I really enjoyed it. It was a little different than I expected. I didn't get the adrenaline rush I had hoped for, but I was in awe of the movie and the production design and this world that they created. And I didn't come out as jittery as I did from Hereditary, but still came out feeling pretty pretty altered, I guess you would say. So I guess I enjoyed it overall.
And Tamika, what about you?
I enjoyed it as well. I didn't get lost on my way to the to my seat,
no.
but I wish, you know.
Wait, you wish you got lost? I was going to say,
yeah,
you must not have liked the movie.
No.
No,
I loved Ari Aster. I just can't get over what a great director he is. Like I loved Hereditary. I loved it so much. And I just was so pumped for this movie. And I had no idea what to expect because the movie is just so bright and shiny, you know, even at like 9 p.m. And everyone's got these like what are they called? Not laurels, but they're like the little Coachella, the Coachella yellow flower headbands. And everyone's so kind and they're smiling. And I thought, what am I about to get myself into? And I'm still thinking about it. I saw it on Monday and I'm really excited to talk about this because I have a lot of questions. Of questions.
And we
like in
have
a good way.
No answers.
No, please don't tell me that.
No, I'm just kidding. Maybe we have some answers. I don't know. This is why we never, for our listeners, you may think sometimes that we discuss this ahead of time and we're prepared. And people are like, no, you guys fumble through it. Of course you're not prepared. But really, like, yeah, we always, like when we start, I'm like, don't talk about it. This way we get into it organically so that I don't know what they think about it. But I'm glad that you both enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with it. I don't know if fun's the word. I had, but that's not true because sometimes I say this and I've had people question this or like, you had fun with that. I had, in some cases, like I remove myself from like the story or pull myself into it. And I had fun watching a master make a movie. And so I think from the filmmaking perspective, it's bright. The cinematography is great. He gets great performances out of his actors. The fact that he's able to like get this money out of A24 and they release it wide theatrically for what really are two art house films is incredible. And very rarely do directors like this get this kind of budget to make these movies the way they want. And then it seems like he has complete creative freedom. And so I think it's incredible to see him have that freedom and have the budget and make the movie he wants. And like I said, to basically see an artist work. So from that point, I really enjoyed it. I also think it deals with some really dark topics that kind of, extend off of the conversation we had before with trauma. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, let's deal with some of those topics, I guess, and talk about them because I think it's right in the forefront. I think if you look at Hereditary is a movie that clearly, and there are other themes, so I don't want to discount because there are way too many takes. I haven't even been able to read all the great takes there are on Hereditary, and I'm sure it's the same with Midsommar. But for Hereditary, obviously in the forefront, and something that they're pushing to the front with the characters is loss and grief and dealing with that. And then I think that for Midsommar, at least some of the themes, I feel like this is a more complex movie. But I think at least some of the themes it's dealing with are grief, panic and anxiety. And again, when is, society tells you in a lot of cases that there's a certain amount of time where you're supposed to, get over a traumatic event or get over loss and you're just supposed to be back to normal. And I love that this movie kind of deals with that. It deals with problematic relationships and not just romantic relationships, but relationships between friends. It deals with the toxicity of these relationships, and it deals with a culture in some ways of like disrespect towards other cultures, and so it really is great in terms of the conversations you can have around this movie. I think almost with I think with Hereditary, I'm trying to think of other movies recently, like with Annihilation. I think Midsommar is another movie where I left it and I was very excited to just talk about it and hear what other people thought and have conversation about it and have people bring things up that I didn't even notice. And then see it again and then pick up something new. And I think it's going to be a movie that I'll watch over and over again. Before we get into deeper topics, as I jump back into this, I completely forgot to share, because I was so excited to get into the deeper stuff. I completely forgot to share my theater experience.
Oh yeah, you did.
Yeah, I did. I completely forgot. So now I'm gonna pull us out of seriousness to get into the really serious topic of, I was supposed to go see this movie with my brother and with Christy, and so we were gonna buy tickets. My brother couldn't make it, and then later in the day, and I had been talking to my mom about this, and she had seen Hereditary. She really liked it. My dad said it was one of his favorite movies, but I knew that she doesn't really like the culty folk horror type stuff. And I'm like, let me see this first and I'll let you know. She said, okay. And she was fine with that. And then Christy can't make it, and I have my extra ticket. And I'm like, okay, Mom, do you want to go see this at the last minute? So I was going to pick her up. And I texted Heather because I knew Heather had already seen this. And I'm like, Heather, my mom made it through Hereditary, but like, she doesn't like tons of violence. Like, is she going to be able to handle this? And Heather tells me there's a gratuitous sex scene. It just keeps going. She's like, so that's the worst thing. And I'm like, I'm like, how bad could it be? And how gratuitous and long could that sex scene be? I'm like, you know what? Like, I can handle it. Like, I'll take my mom to the movie. If that's the worst thing, like, we'll just close our eyes, or whatever the case is. We'll just, not look at each other or not pretend it didn't happen, because that scene's going to be what? The scene's going to be what? 20 seconds? I was thinking that was gratuitous. I was not prepared for the sex scene in this movie. Not because I wasn't prepared for it personally. Like, there was nothing wrong with it, but it just wasn't something I needed to be right next to my mother.
Your mother.
During.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, anyway.
I knew that. I knew when you said that. I'm like, oh, that's the first scene I thought of.
Yeah. You're like, oh yeah. So that happened. But I was uncomfortable about it because, you don't want to go to a movie and see sex scenes with your parents. At least I don't. I know there's some families that they're much more comfortable with that stuff. It's just, it doesn't usually happen. So I'm like, I'm not gonna, I'm good. Whereas like my mom was watching like Sense8 and OA with my brother. So like, they're more comfortable watching that kind of stuff. Anyway, long story short, she enjoyed it. She really enjoyed the movie.
Oh,
that's nice.
Yeah. So, like I said, that awkward scene, aside from that, she had a good time with the movie and definitely thought it was crazy, but we had a lot to talk about. So, enough of that. Let's dive back into it as I take us out of the seriousness of Midsommar. And Tamika, let's go with you. What are some of the themes that interested you about this movie? And what are some of the questions that you wanted to talk about?
Okay. Well, I'll start with, because I have a lot of questions, so I'll spare some of them. I'll spare you from some of them. I definitely see the, exploring and unpacking grief, obviously, considering what happens in the beginning. And from the interviews that I've seen, or that, Ari was talking about the movie, he said, it was about, like grief and catharsis. And so I can see that. But I also picked up on, he really likes unpacking dysfunction, and like how the couple is like so toxic for each other and just codependent. And I don't know if I see like a deep dive on that so often, especially not in horror movies. Maybe it's touched on briefly, just to only kind of make you feel like worse for this couple when awful things start to happen to them later, like once they get to the vacation or the island or wherever. But it was just so unnerving, and kind of, in a way, it's interesting that Ari brought up catharsis, because it was kind of like cathartic for me to, with some of my, I guess, bringing some of my own past experiences to this movie. In a way, it kind of helped, like watching them go through things. It kind of don't know, like it kind of helped me like heal in a way. And I just thought that was interesting. Like, this couple is like a really hard time. And I agree too. I really hate that society puts a time frame on sorrow. It's such an odd thing. I mean, I get it. I guess maybe, you don't want people to feel bad. So you kind of allow them some sort of a grieving period. But then after a while, it's like, no, let this go. Okay, you got to move forward. You can't let this like take you down or whatever. And it's just it's so odd, really. So it was nice to see Ari kind of unpack that. But I get the xenophobia, or not, maybe xenophobia, I'm not sure is the word, but sort of like fear of the other. And I don't know, this might be a stretch, but it felt very kind of Get Out to me in that way. Kind of, not a fear of the other, but just kind of a nervousness. Like, oh, this is like super different. So super different equals, strange or bad, or in this case, like really like evil and nefarious. So I don't know, but I have to discuss further because I'm not entirely sure if maybe I misunderstood that aspect of the film. But the grief.
You go ahead.
Yeah, but the other two themes, those just stuck out to me early on. But the other stuff, I'm not so sure.
Well, the thing with the friends, or I should say the thing about being afraid of the unknown is interesting. Or I think this kind of goes to what I mentioned about like the disrespect. Is that even though, like I said, you're playing with the main characters, you're playing with Danny and Christian and their relationship, and you see that, and that's more in the front for us. But then you look at his other friends, and you look at the one that pees on the tree, and like he doesn't even give it second thought, right? He has no respect for what they're doing,
right?
And he doesn't even know that what they're getting into in terms of like, he doesn't know that their lives are on the line. And he has that complete disrespect. And then it's interesting that there's Josh, played by William Jackson Harper, and who's Chidi on The Good Place. If you've watched that, have fun with that show.
I love The Good Place.
But he's really great in that. So it was fun to see him here. But it's interesting because even though he kind of plays, and maybe they did that on purpose, kind of plays like a Chidi-like character, and that he's like interested in research and he's really into his paper, you also see that side of him that then does disrespect their culture. They tell him no, and he sneaks in to start taking pictures. Where initially when I saw his face before, when he's sitting at the table, I thought maybe it was clicking in his head that like something's wrong and our lives are going to be on the line, or we're going to be killed, we're going to be sacrificed. But instead, it seems like it was more like plotting how he was going to be able to like get one over on these people so that he could get the pictures, so he could get ahead of Jack, who also is looking to write a paper about this. So I thought that was interesting. And again, it was this, like I said, this toxic relationship between friends where they are friends, but they don't mind backstabbing each other or fighting one another. And then you have that disrespect for the culture, that even when they don't realize that they're gonna die, like I can understand why your attitude would change then. But even without them realizing it, they were still kind of pretty terrible and disrespectful to the entire, to that entire culture.
And it's interesting too, because the Hälsingland people, they seem so joyous even around so much death, and it's such a contrast. And I think it makes it, like you said, Tamika, even more unnerving that they have no problem with sacrificing both their own people and outsiders for this greater good that they all believe in. It's like they feel like the people that are being killed, it's an honor, even if they don't want to be killed. They're looking at it as, you know, we're giving you this opportunity to be a part of something bigger than yourself. And we're not trying to be like, we're not the evil cult that's sacrificing you for our, like we're totally aware that we're going and we're killing these people for some evil purpose. It seems more like, oh, isn't this awesome? Like, you're going to die. I'm going to die one day. Let's all rejoice. You're just going to die like today. And I'm going to throw myself off a cliff in 20 years, but we're all cool with it. So it makes it that much more unsettling. And then when you throw in the daylight aspect of it, where it's all in, most of it's in broad daylight, just totally adds to that trippy experience. So I definitely see the difference in culture and how, and that disrespect that comes about from that just kind of accelerates things. But it's really interesting how they portray this community and really not try to make it like over the top evil, but just more like, this is how we do things here. You're in our world now. And that's a very dangerous place for you to be at this moment in time, which is kind of cool that they find a way to work around like the stereotypical, you know, we're all, I mean, they are a cult in some way, but it just doesn't feel like they're hitting us over the head with, you know, we're chanting and we're doing this and that. It's more like, this is our way of life. Embrace it and die.
Put that on the poster. This is our way of life. Accept it and die.
And you mentioned too, Jonathan, with Josh. I thought the exact same thing when he's looking around at the dinner table and we get a close up on his face. I still kind of think that he is starting to realize what's going on, but he's so wrapped up in the thesis project that he is still kind of in that mode. Like when he left his shoes on at night, I thought that was so that he could be ready in case anything went down. And
I thought the same thing.
But I feel like there's recognition there too. And I feel like the really interesting thing about this movie is that even though Danny and Christian are the ones that we focus on the most, it feels like everyone is living their own movie, because Josh will go off and stuff. It seems like stuff happens to him. Like things are registering and we're not seeing his entire story, but he's the main character in his own movie. And I feel the same way about Will Poulter's character, Mark, where we see him like he goes off on his own like 3 or 4 different times in the movie, and he's like having his own storyline, and we just see him pop in once in a while. But it feels like you could almost tell the movie from their points of view. But it almost feels like Josh could have almost becomes the main character for a while, and I feel like he kind of is, but he just lets that drive for the thesis take over a little bit. But I feel like he kind of knew what was going on, because he had that recognition, even with Pele, where him and Pele were kind of like, yeah, this is what's going to happen next. But of course, he didn't really realize it was going to take maybe quite that turn.
Yeah. So I mean, what I wonder there is, and this totally could have been just something that changed in the edit, or this could have been an alternate scene or something that was refilmed, or restructured, I should say, in terms of the story. I'm with you that it looks almost like he knows, he realizes it, and he realizes he has to do something. I expected when his shoes were on that he was going to run, and he doesn't. So I am curious as to whether or not that's intentional. And when we see it registering, it's supposed to make us think that he knows what's going on, or if he does know what's going on and he doesn't care, he feels like he can, I don't know if it's win it is the right word, but that he can rise above it because he has this relationship with this community now. And that if he has the pictures on top of it, he'll have it's worth risking his life for this perfect thesis.
Anything to get that A.
But yeah, I guess so, but he's dead now.
But that's another kind of question I have about some of these characters. Like, why and I hate bringing this back to Get Out, but when you sense that something is really, really wrong, why don't you leave? Like yeah. So the grade is that important?
Well, you had that couple that realized something was wrong and they didn't make it out. This is the interesting part that kind of I don't know if it sort of contradicts, even though this community isn't evil. That part does kind of contradict things. I do agree, Derek, with something that you had brought up, where one of my favorite things about this movie is that what they're doing to you is not evil. They're not trying to torture you. This is all like the at the end of your life jumping off the cliff. They believe that is, it is the right thing to do. There's nothing wrong with it. And they also, I guess, believe there is nothing wrong with killing outsiders who try to leave the festival. But yeah, it seemed like basically there was no way they were getting out of this. The thing I'm curious about, though, is that obviously we know they thinned the numbers of guests. And so had they not, when I was doing the math, it seemed like there was maybe like 1 or 2 extra people who might have survived, had everything gone a certain way. And so I'm wondering what they would have done with the outsiders, like giving them the ability to join the community, or they'll kill you. I'm guessing it was still something like that, where they would have joined the community in like a lesser role. But yeah, I think the whole dynamic's interesting.
I feel that's one of the things about the movie that I wasn't 100% on board with. I feel like a lot of the characters get killed off too soon, just because it is almost a 2.5-hour movie. And for me, the horror of the movie reached its peak about the 3/4 mark, where a certain character dies. There's a little, nighttime scene. And for me, that was the most shocking scene in the movie and the scariest scene in the movie. And that was the last time where I was truly kind of surprised about what was going on. But I feel like they went through their cast so quickly that I'm like, oh, I wish we had more time with this person, or, ooh, they had such a great dynamic. And I understand why they did it, because they're really focusing on this relationship element, and there's a lot of symbolism there and everything like that. But to me, it was like, oh, I really wish, we could have seen, it would have been more unexpected if somebody had stuck around longer, because I know in interviews, Ari has been talking about, well, we know from he's saying like part of the story is that from the get-go, we kind of know this is going to become like a sacrifice movie, like everyone's going to be sacrificed. And we keep people around by having this anthropology element where everyone's so fascinated with the culture that they don't really realize their judgment is clouded to a certain extent. But I wish that, so even though maybe the road was leading towards everyone being sacrificed, I wish that maybe we would have gotten a little different take on that, or a little different pacing of it, or something like that. Because like you, I was kind of wondering, well, what if this had happened, or what if that had happened? But maybe that's the beauty of it too, is that you kind of ask those questions.
I think so. I think you're supposed to ask. I think you're supposed to, react however, you react to the film. And then I think you're supposed to react to your reaction, because I've done it while we're talking. I've done it several times while we're just like, I thought, well, okay, they're evil, but then, yeah, that's a good point. They don't think they're evil, but then does it matter if they think they're evil? Like, is that like something that can be measured?
Yeah, but they're evil according to what? This is one of those,
yeah.
Ethical questions. Like, is what they're doing evil? Like, they're talking. They were talking about, and they mentioned this a little bit, like the elderly. How we treat the elderly. Different cultures, even modernized cultures, treat the elderly different and have a tough time figuring out what to do when someone is older and doesn't have, children to take care of them, or, doesn't have the money to get them the proper treatment. Like, there are all kinds of, that brings up all kinds of questions. And in a very non-serious thing, by the way, but I have to mention this because it just popped in my head. If you have a culture where you've been growing up for about 70 years, seeing people jump off the cliff, why would you do what the old man did and just jump straight off the cliff on your legs?
Yeah, take the eagle approach.
It made for a great scene. So I know why they did it, because again, you have a great scene. But if I'm going to jump off the cliff, I have 70 years to get it right. There's no way I'm jumping feet first.
No. And
no.
And you're right. I love how they portray that the violence in the movie with that kind of stuff, because that scene where they just pull back and there's nothing glamorous about it. It's like, here in real time, here's how someone would drop from this cliff. And there's no music really. There's just nothing overly dramatic about it. He just kind of hits the ground, splat. And then even when they go to finish him off with the hammer, it's very like anticlimactic in a really disturbing way, where it's just so matter of fact, like, oh, now it's your turn. You hit him in the head. And then it was interesting watching it with an audience. There were moments where people were verbally kind of looking at each other and going, what did we just watch? Or like when they do the close-ups on the smashed faces, everyone kind of flinches. So it was kind of interesting how the violence is even more disturbing when it's handled just so realistically, or there's nothing glamorous, or they're not trying too hard with it. It's just like, here's what it is, and take it for what it is. But yeah, don't jump feet first.
No. That's such a good point. See, this is why I have to watch this movie again, because that's a good question, Jonathan. Why is that?
Yeah, that's just me being picky, though. You needed the great scene, like from a special effects standpoint, watching the guy's legs break and then taking the hammer to him. Like that was there weren't many scenes where this movie really pushed it. And I think this goes back to what you were talking about, Derek, about how this movie wasn't super surprising. And I think that's undoubtedly there are people that will compare Hereditary to this. And I think what I like about Hereditary is how surprising a lot of the scenes are. Mm-hmm. And not just the scenes, but the story. I expected that with Hereditary, it didn't necessarily need to go full horror and supernatural. It could have leaned the other way, where it was just a crazy person. And many times during the movie, I thought that might be the case. Mm. And there were many surprising scenes throughout Hereditary. This movie, I don't feel like there were many surprises, but I feel like they were able to push some scenes more. And I'm glad that it did have that push, because I think it needed it. But yeah, I definitely feel like this wasn't as much of a surprise. I know that wasn't the point, but I could have dealt with a little more. I don't know if it's a little more complexity in terms of the story, or how certain characters wind up where they wind up.
Yeah, like a little more suspense.
Yeah, and I feel the same way. For me, like I mentioned, the last moment I was kind of really on the edge of my seat in the movie was more towards the middle or the 3/4 mark, and I really liked and appreciated everything they did in the third act, but it felt like, oh, it's doing exactly what I expected, and I didn't quite expect that. So I guess it was a little unexpected in a weird roundabout way. But I do feel like, as it works more as a dark comedy and a drama than it does a horror movie. It doesn't. I feel like they had an opportunity to really push some of the sacrifice elements, and it didn't. That part of it was the one part of the movie where I felt a little, not necessarily disappointed, but just a little like, oh, maybe you didn't squeeze all the juice out of this orange that you had, and it was all, you had the whole table set, and there were so many different things that you could have done, and it just kind of feels like the main focus of the movie wasn't to do that, which is fine, but at the same time, I really wish that they would have pushed the envelope in a little bit more, as far as the character demises and how, especially with all these rituals that they have in place. I almost expected it to be more Green Inferno-esque, or kind of like the 80s cannibal movies, or the 70s cannibal movies as well. So that was the one part where I felt a little less on the edge of my seat. Especially, I couldn't help but compare it to Hereditary as a viewer, just because I was expecting, like, that. Seeing Hereditary in theaters was why I go to the movies. That adrenaline rush, and just pure, like, looking in the shadows and wondering what's there, and just totally effing with my mind. And Midsommar felt a little more just rhythmic and free flowing, and you kind of know where it's going, and it's more of a sight to behold than one to really shake your foundation. But at the same time, it's I absolutely admire the movie. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous cinematography. The horror department, it left me a little wanting, but that was kind of the only part that left me wanting.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'm not saying that I expected, like a gore show or something, because there was enough. I was good with that. I was super good with that. But yeah, I don't know. There was something that was lacking, and maybe it was kind of a more horror feel, and maybe. I don't know. I don't want to spark up this conversation, but maybe it's not necessarily a horror film.
Uh-oh.
Now we'll get the fan mail.
You're doing it. Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's different things to different people. I think it can be very horrific to different people. And I also think the horror comes from different places, right? It might not be a horror movie from like if you follow like slasher tropes,
right?
Or if, Derek, you were talking about cannibal movies, but for me, this is kind of like a spiritual successor to like The Wicker Man. And The Wicker Man is definitely a horror movie. Robin Hardy might have called it at times a comedy, or when he did, I remember The Wicker Tree, and he was like, and it's a dark comedy. And even though there wasn't anything that was very funny, but there was, like I said, he knew when he was making it that it wasn't what people would firmly feel was a horror movie. But I mean, there's definitely horrific elements here. Again, like I said, the relationship breakdown and the trauma that Danny goes through. I mean, to me, those are horrific events.
Yeah, I think the first third of the movie is probably more horrifying than anything that happens in the second half of the film, just because it is so in your face, and that, like Ari does, he doesn't really make it over the top. He's just, here's this horrific event. Now you deal with it just like the main character's dealing with it. And it's a sobering experience, especially when it happens that early in the movie, like something so traumatic. But I think it's one of those movies that incorporates so many different genres that I think you can kind of take it for what it is. And I think it is a horror movie. It's got a lot of horror in its DNA, but I feel like for me, it almost worked more as a dark comedy as well. Just the things that there was a lot of laughter in the theater when I saw this, and it wasn't like unintentional laughter. It just felt like, oh, we're kind of supposed to laugh at this because it is so absurd. But maybe that's kind of the scary part too, is that we're laughing at this, like, why am I doing this? And it brings up all those emotions in yourself. And I think that's what a good movie does, is kind of makes you not doubt yourself, but maybe question yourself a little bit as you're watching something.
Exactly. React to your reaction. Like, wait, what am I doing right now?
Yeah, hopefully it made some people think. I read comments from people who were, it was Midsommar was trending because people were making comments about going with their significant other, and this movie kind of being a test, seeing how they reacted to it.
Yeah, I've got a personal anecdote for that one, just from my theater going experience.
Yeah, go ahead.
The theater, I go and I get my seat, and I'm sitting directly behind a younger couple, maybe in their early to mid 20s. And before the movie, they're just so in love. They're like snuggling. They got the armrest up. It's like they're sitting in one seat. They're, her head's on his shoulder. They're settling in for the movie. Quick peck on the cheek right before the movie starts, and then the movie happens. And as the movie progresses, like at the beginning of the movie, they're like one person. They're just, so comfortable. It's like they're on their couch at home, arms around each other, just all snuggled up. By the end of the movie, during that gratuitous sex scene, during everything that happens in the third act, by the time the end credits roll, the lady is about as far away as she can get from the guy in her seat. And the guy has his hands on his knees, and he's just leaned forward as far as he can go, Like he's just trying to process what he just watched, or maybe throw up, or maybe both. And it was just like a great before and after picture of what Midsommar will do to a relationship. And I couldn't help but wonder whose idea was it to go see the movie, because I can totally see that conversation when they get home. Like, because in the theater, it seemed like half the people really loved it and half the people were looking at the person they went with and giving them that look like, why did you bring me to this? So I can only imagine what that ride home was like. It was just really fascinating to watch as I drank my Angry Orchard and munched on my pumpkin seeds.
Yeah, it's maybe
it was a good movie to see alone for that reason.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, in some cases, maybe that can be helpful. It's one of those things where for people who are in a toxic relationship, maybe it opened their eyes to hey, sometimes, Tamika, you had mentioned about it being a cathartic experience, about reflecting on the past, and we do that through movies culturally. And so maybe, this movie, it sounds like it did, but hopefully this helped a few people, who were in a toxic relationship and said, hey, you know what? My relationship isn't too dissimilar from this, even as crazy as the story gets, and help them get out of it. In other cases, I think it's a good way to point to trauma and how to help people who are dealing with that and who deal with loss. And, again, as a way to see that, people don't just get over things, or even if people say they're okay, it doesn't mean they're okay. There's a lot of people with mental health issues. There are a lot of people who have panic attacks, who have anxiety, and these things are real. And, whether you are this person's significant other, whether you're one of their friends or whatever the case may be, or a family member, I think movies like this in some cases are like a signal like, hey, maybe the old conventions or the old way of thinking about how we deal with that. It's not how the real world works. And so for this being a work of fiction, I think it was able to portray those things in very realistic ways that make people think.
I agree.
Yeah, really. And it's interesting how when Heather Wixson for Daily Dead interviewed Jack Rayner and Ari Aster, they were talking about this a little bit, how they didn't want to make Christian like this one-dimensional, like super bad boyfriend character where it's over the top and unbelievable. They kind of approached it as, it seemed like they approached it more of like a passive aggressiveness, like we're just not on the same page. He's not necessarily an evil guy, but he is a little more emotionally manipulative, and they're just not right for each other. And it's that toxicity that kind of comes out of that inability to like align correctly. And I think Christian is not a great guy by any means. I'm not saying he's, totally in the right or anything like that, but it's interesting how they kind of make him this kind of multidimensional character where you see this manipulative side of him, but then you're also like, oh, does he deserve everything in this movie? It kind of makes you wonder, because Ari was like, I want you to watch this movie and, question why you're, whether you cheer or whether this happens or what you think of these decisions that are made. It's just really interesting that they did that. And I think it is more realistic to kind of portray a relationship with that more like this kind of thing, this passive aggressive thing that kind of wears down over time, instead of like, oh, this guy's just a jerk, he's yelling all the time, all that. It's like there's these, you get these like glimpses at different sides of this relationship. And I know that I guess Jack had said that there were scenes that were cut out of the movie where they had like a more loving relationship portrayed, and they kind of cut those out to focus a little more on his manipulative side. But it's interesting how it sounds like they really went the distance to kind of show the gray area a little bit more than maybe we're used to in like a Hollywood movie. And this is not really a Hollywood movie. I guess it's more of a Swedish movie. So, but yeah, it's I thought that was really interesting how they went about doing that. And I think Florence was just amazing at not only reacting to that, but then also, like you said, the trauma and just portraying all these different reactions to things going on in her life at this just horrible time. So it's really fascinating how they explored that dichotomy more and more throughout the movie.
I have to watch this movie again.
Yes.
I just do. And I'm actually looking forward to that, because as much as I loved Hereditary, it was definitely a movie that I really only saw twice, because it raked my spirit through the coals.
Theoretically and
yes,
and
also
literally.
true. it is a wonderful film, but it just hit really close to home and it was a lot. It was a lot. And Midsummer, although there are some horrific things that happen, felt lighter in a way.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I can totally see myself watching this a couple times just so I can wrap my head around this movie better. So I look forward to that for sure.
Okay, so we're going to take a break from all this heaviness because, wow, we talked about Midsommar, which I knew was going to be heavy. We got into heavy topics with Stranger Things, which I didn't even really think about until we started getting into it. So we're going to lighten this up with a little non-horror. We're gonna talk about, first of all, you know what? Before I even get to that, because I had another topic, but screw that. We'll get to it in a minute. We're still going. We're still running. Tamika, how's your summer been?
It's been really nice, actually. I made a New Year's resolution that I was going to go to more concerts, which I sort of did. I've been to two. It would have been three had the Lauryn Hill concert worked out, but she canceled, and then
oh no,
she didn't reschedule. So
it was just done.
So that one didn't happen.
What did you end up seeing?
Oh, Bad Bunny. He's a Latin ex-rapper, Puerto Rican. It's very cool. That was a lot of fun. He had this, there's a couple songs where he did this kind of like a light show, I guess like laser lights. Is that what they're called? It was like
it sounds like something that we would have said in the 80s or 90s, but I like calling it a laser light show still.
It's a light show, but
just call them laser lights. I like it.
Way to make me feel old.
Tamika, I still tell people that I'm going to tape something. When I'm like, I have my phone and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just taping it. Okay. That's how you know that you're from a certain decade. I say tape all the time still. All the time. I say it at least once a month. Tape comes out.
Tape.
Yeah. That's how you know. Like if I were trying, like if I had, I don't know, some genetic experiment to make me younger, like that would give me away. I would it'd sneak into school and be talking about stuff. I'm like, oh, I'm taping that. And they're like, you're doing what? So. Anyway.
Okay.
So you can say laser light show. It's okay. Is what I'm saying.
It's not a laser light show, but it's a light show. I know people still use that term or phrase.
I think so.
A light show.
What about a laser rave show?
Yay.
And we're getting a little more 90s, I guess.
Yeah, because we're getting into raves. Well, okay. So Jay-Z Beyonce, that was last year, like this time last year, but it's still within a year, like it's now, if this was maybe like August or September, then no, but we're still in the 12-month area. So that technically counts. I'm counting it as this year. And that was awesome. They came to FedEx Field. No one ever comes to FedEx Field. There's so many people. I have never heard so much screaming in my life. Someone fainted. A girl in front of me fainted.
Whoa. Yeah.
So that was interesting. Beyonce will do that to you. You're like, oh my God, Beyonce.
When the queen
so it wasn't
comes to
heat
town.
Exhaustion. It was because she was so excited.
Yeah, probably. It was also hot, because
so it was probably the heat exhaustion.
Yeah.
No, it could have been both.
Yes, it could have been both.
No, heat exhaustion's terrible. I was at a concert last year and some dude who was 6'5" fell on me.
Ooh.
and I'm 5'10", so I had to pick him up, and then he fell, and then he's like, "Oh, I'm good." I'm like, "No, you're not." He fell back on me again.
Not, oh, I'm good.
As long as you keep holding me up, I'm good.
Yeah, basically.
Oh my God.
But anyway, so concerts. What else you got going on, Tamika?
No, I wouldn't say like, I feel like that's been the highlight. It's been really cool. I've gotten to like go to different places. This one show is in Reading. So that was cool because I'd never been to Reading, Pennsylvania. And then
Nice. I don't think I've been there.
And then the other was in Philly. So it was cool. I got to travel. I feel like that's where I feel really good, where I get to travel and be my best Sagittarius self.
Nice. That sounds great.
It was. Yes.
Yeah, Derek, how's your summer been?
It's been really good. It's been a summer of horror at the movies. It seems like every week there's been a major horror movie hitting theaters. I think it's like 6 or 7 consecutive weeks. I think the streak might end with Crawl coming up here. But so it's been really fun to go and see a bunch of movies at the theater. And I've been doing a lot of fishing. My family, we love to bass fish. So we go up to the cabin and go out in the lake. And just anytime I'm out on the water, I feel at peace. I think I'm part fish. I'm like a freshwater Aquaman knockoff. That's me. So I feel.
I just picture you in the orange Aquaman outfit now.
No.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just not as many abs, but
hey, you can get the like spray on abs
That's
though.
true.
Or like you can get the Halloween costume with the little ab like cushions.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, I'm working on expanding the 2-pack right now, so we'll see how that goes.
Expanding the 2-pack.
But I like 6-packs to drink 6-packs. I don't know how that's gonna go. It might.
No, you keep it with those Angry Orchards. Yeah, it's all downhill from there. Yeah.
So that's been really cool, and went to Marquette, Michigan for a little Habitat for Humanity project. So that was just I'd never been to Michigan before, let alone the UP. So that was just really gorgeous up there. And you could just hike up a mountain right in the backyard of the place. And it was really nice to just kind of hit the road and go over there. So I've been there. I fished Lake Michigan with my dad. We do like these catch and release bass tournaments. So we're doing a few of those this summer. And it's been really great. I can't believe it's almost halfway over already. We're almost at Comic-Con time now. So it's kind of what I'm kind of most obsessed with is how fast this summer's going.
Yeah, it's been a fast summer. It's really quick for me. It's been good. I've seen a lot of movies, but the best thing is because I'm in Western New York, I don't have any snow, so I get to enjoy the weather and go running and walking. I'll even take walking. I don't even need to run. I'll just happy to be able to walk outside and swimming. And so I've been enjoying the outdoors and and catching up with some movies. And and more VR. I got this game called Blood and Truth, which is part John Wick, part Snatch, part James Bond, but it's all in VR, and it's like super scripted, which is fun. And you have 2 guns. Actually, you have 4 guns. So it's just like you got to reload them. You get to throw grenades. You get to like duck and shoot. And like I said, it's all in VR. I almost broke my ceiling fan a couple times, so that was fun as I was trying to shoot some people up by the ceiling. So yeah, it was good. So I've been enjoying that. And I saw the new Spider-Man. I had fun with that one. I know you saw it too, Derek.
Yeah. I enjoyed it as well. I feel like it was kind of, obviously it's the first movie since Avengers, the first Marvel movie. So that's kind of a lot to live up to, but I think it was a lot of fun. And I really liked Homecoming. I didn't like this one quite as much as Homecoming. But I think I found it a lot more entertaining as a comedy than like a superhero movie, but it was very kind of lighthearted and fun, but also dealt with some pretty heavy issues as well, especially with what happened in Endgame and with Peter Parker kind of struggling to figure out who he is and how he balances Spider-Man with Peter Parker. So I feel like they definitely checked a lot of boxes. There's some of the stuff with Mysterio that felt maybe like it could have been done a little differently, but I it's more minor gripes that I have. The movie, strangely to me, it felt a lot like Iron Man 3, and so it kind of just, it didn't quite feel like a full-on Spider-Man movie to me, but again, I really enjoyed it and had a lot of fun with it, so I'd still recommend it. And I think they do the school trip thing really well, especially they have JB Smoove and Martin Starr as the chaperones, and it's just so much fun. Kind of reminds me of like the Lizzie McGuire movie in a strange way too, which I don't mind that at all. So it was very, I have all these emotions. It's so weird, but it was overall, like you, I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Yeah, it was a good Spider-Man movie. I mean, my only problem is that knowing the business of it, we know that right now the deal is that Marvel and Sony have one more movie together, which means we're only going to get one more movie likely in this series unless they continue that, or they kind of re-up that deal. So this feels very much like I don't know, like an episode of a Spider-Man TV series for me, more than a full movie, especially with the way the end credit scenes work. I'm excited to see where they go, but it's just like, I would like to see them keep building this world. Like, I want to see Doc Ock and Green Goblin and the rest of them. So I think I have less problems with this movie itself, and I have more, I don't know, I have more anxiety over what they're going to do with the entire series. Like, I just want them to continue it. So hopefully everything goes well and Sony and Marvel play nice and they just keep it going.
Yeah, that's the thing, is we've seen Spider-Man rebooted a few times now, and it's hard to get invested sometimes because you just wonder, well,
that's exactly it.
And Sony is building up their superhero universe or anti-hero universe now that they have another Venom movie coming out, and they've been working on the Morbius movie.
Yeah, well, it's their Spider-Verse.
Yeah, so you kind of have this feeling that they're gearing up for, to bring Spider-Man back. And you kind of wonder if, even if the money is really good, will they, go back to Marvel, or will they just take Spider-Man back for keeps? I don't know, but it'll be interesting. To me, my favorite Spider-Mans are still the Sam Raimi ones. I'm probably biased because I grew up with them, but even revisiting them on like TV, it just feels so complete to me. Like, it feels like a very human story while still having this kind of epic scope to it. And these Spider-Mans are a little more tech centric. There's a lot more of an Iron Man influence in there, obviously very intentionally. But I really like the comic book feel of the Sam Raimi movies and the performances in those. So I'm hoping that we can get to that. I don't want to say that level, because I think these movies exist really well on their own. They're their own personality, and Tom Holland is great as Spider-Man, but I'll be really curious to see where they go as like tonally in the future, whether it's at Sony or Marvel, or who knows, a third party might enter the picture.
It can't go anywhere else.
So yeah, there's a lot to digest there.
There is. And we can keep going.
Maybe it's
and
all
going
an illusion.
And going. One of these days, what we should just do is, like, everybody thinks the episode's about to end, and then we get into a new topic. So we'll just do, this will be our 20-hour episode. But no, really, we're done. We're done here. So thank you, Derek and Tamika, for joining me, so we can discuss Stranger Things and Midsommar and talk about our summers a little bit. So for our listeners, make sure to visit corpseclub.com to check out our latest episode and our backlog of episodes. We have 111, 112. I don't know where we're at exactly right now, but they're all there. You can also sign up to become a Corpse Club member, which will give you benefits such as access to bonus content. We have Corpse Club pin, Corpse Club t-shirt, membership card, and at certain levels, you can pick an episode topic. You can tell us what you want to hear. Don't forget to rate and review us on iTunes. Every rating and review really helps, so please head over to iTunes so you can do that. You can also find us on Google Play, SoundCloud, and all of your favorite podcast providers. If you want to get in touch, you can reach out anytime at contact@corpseclub.com, or on Twitter, we're at Daily Dead News, or we're at Corpse Club, and on Instagram and Facebook, we're under Corpse Club. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, stay scary.
Bye.